it's good to pencil lay out our letters, even for practice, because it develops that muscle memory of each letter and its components, creating a system out of each letter. And also, if we're going to do a project, we're going to have to lay it out anyway, whether we make a paper pattern, pounced, transferred onto our project panel, or if we're going to lay it out right onto the panel, because we got to have a start and finish point. So going ahead and sketch out our letters is just a great habit, and it also builds that that space and letter width construction memory that we need. So starting with the A, capital A, we're going to establish our letter width with, like, for example, this one. Let's say this was the beginning of our sentence, and if we were to say, okay, well, this is going to be here and this is going to be here. Might be a little thin, but that has established our letter width for the rest of the word or sentence that we're going to do for our project. So once we've done that, we're going to say, well, okay, then the B is going to be within those parameters. And of course, this loop is, just comes about just above the halfway point. Halfway point meaning between the baseline and the top line, and also the bottom loop sticks out a little bit more, and you can even just indicate that too. And then this horizontal bar is just below the halfway point on the A. And by the way, the measurement from the top guideline to the bottom guideline is 2 3/4 inches, and from the top guideline to the X line is 7/8 of an inch. And I'm using a blue Stabilo grease pencil to write these letters. So now we've established this continuity of letter space. So we're just going to keep moving on forward, locking that in our minds. And as I draw these, I'm actually locking my wrist. My wrist is locked, and I'm just moving my elbow and my shoulder to make these, especially the rounds. When it comes to like the C, for example, when you just go to sketch it in, it's just a matter of just using the shoulder, more of the shoulder, and then indicating these 2 points here lock us in, and they're perfectly vertical. And that gives us a freedom to just concentrate on our radius and in the reality we're going to be thinking about this inner negative space when we're actually lettering. And also, if we want, we could do this. But basically, these all are indicating the spine of the letter, indicating the middle or center. For the most part, there'll be some, obvious adjustments to that. But for the most part, it establishes our center, and that also establishes our letter space between our letters too. Because obviously, we don't want to get too connected. Otherwise, we're going to blend our letters in. So we're going to go to A, B, C, and D. Obviously, C is going to be a little wider than the B and the A, and so on. So is the D, is a little bit wider. So it's just a matter of visualizing that. It's just a little wider than that, and we can do that if we wanted to say I'm not going to go beyond that, just because that looks right with the rest of the letters. And then the E, we can just mark. It's going to be the same as the B and the A, so we can just indicate the end strokes. These are all going to be about vertical with each other. The middle one you could fudge in just a little bit, but we just need to indicate where the ends are, and the F. Same thing. G is just going to be just like the C, so we're going to make a radius, and we'll want to establish our letter width, so we're going to end it where we want it to end, so it looks right, and it looks harmonious with the rest of the alphabet. And this comes just above the halfway point and to the center point, this horizontal stroke. Then H is generally a little wider letter than And this also, all these horizontals are just above the halfway point. Halfway meaning from the bottom to the top. I obviously is just a vertical stroke. J drops down to a little hook. We could also establish that as well. Say that's where I'm stopping because that looks right to me. K starts with a vertical, comes out to the letter width, like the B, for example, comes out to here and then goes down to the halfway point with that thin stroke. And then we just come off of this corner to create this one. We're going to kick it past this a little bit. Don't go too far though past that. Otherwise there's a tendency or a temptation to go way out here like that. But we just want to keep it just slightly past the top stroke. L is a vert with a width like an E. M, also a little wider. And I like to do the two outside parallel lines, establish that. So I'm going to be just slightly like say this was the B. So it's about a third of a, so it's about like 1/3 of a letter more. And then establishing this center point. Yeah, you could draw these in. Just to keep it up, just so you know what letter it is. N. Again, outside, this is going to be this standard width. Just so you know what letter it is. O. Again, just with the shoulder and elbow, but mostly the shoulder. So we're going to just establish that. O. Going to come around, obviously a little lower than the baseline, but putting it on the baseline will create that because we're considering this for the most part being the center or spine of the letter. And we can also say I'm not going past that, or not going past that, not going past that, not going past that. So it kind of establishes our radius too, kind of gives us a little more visual boundary. P. This comes down a little further than the B, almost to the halfway point. In fact, to the halfway point. Comes to the halfway point. It's more balanced. Q, obviously, is going to be an O with a tail. So we'll just do the exact same thing we did with the O. Boom, boom. Establish our quadrant or our parameter, and we're not going to go past that. You could even do this if you want. It's going to be about a 45-degree angle. If I want to say I don't want to go any beyond those points, you can do that. R is going to have a loop more like the B. It's going to be a little tighter to the top, so just above the halfway point. And this leg of the R is going to come right out of the corner. But again, we want to be sure, like the K, we don't want to go too far past that. Otherwise, it looks really funky and weird. S, our troublemaker. For this S, what I usually do is I'll start out with a snake. And again, this is using the shoulder, more shoulder than wrist. And I'm going to say I'm not going to go past that. I'm not going to go past that. That's about the halfway between the 2X. And this is just above this line. And then I want to be inside this just slightly. So you don't want to start the stroke lined up with this. Just be slightly inside. So in other words, if this was a dotted line, down to this outside. So these are outside points that we're talking about here. So we just want to be to the inside of that. So that's our goal. And it's obviously this loop is always going to be smaller than the lower loop. And so that's why we raise this up high, and this just goes right in the center. This X line helps us establish that point. Gives us a consistency. If we were doing 3 S's in a row, like the SS minnow or something, then it's nice to have the S close to both of them being very close and similar in shape. T, I like to go ahead and do the horizontal, and establish that. That establishes my letter space, and also then from that point, it's easy just to run a vert right off the center. U is just a nice loop. Comes around to our letter width. Again, I'm just using my shoulder most part. V is an upside down A. So we want to just remember that, and if we need to refer back to the A, we can just look and see what's that letter width right there. W is two V's but thinner. So just slightly thinner V's. Otherwise, it's going to be too massive, and it'll look out of place in the alphabet and in the word we're making. So just make them slightly narrower than the V, and that's going to look harmonious with the rest of the words we're doing. In the X, we want to establish our letter width. We want to, we don't go beyond that. We want to stay in the B, A, all those letters. But it'll kick a little bit on the bottom. It kind of does that automatically. The reason why is because our cross point is above the halfway point. So our eyeball is going to say, when I execute my diagonal strokes, they're going to go above the halfway line point, and that automatically kicks these 2 points past these 2 points just a hair. Which that's the way that's the way an X is supposed to be. So just make sure that this intersection is above the halfway point. There's our halfway point. There's the intersection. And the Y is basically like a squatted V and come down to just about the halfway point. The halfway point for the Y, not too high, because otherwise it doesn't look harmonious with the rest of the alphabet. So come down about the halfway point, and then obviously vertical. And Z, we just box that in. Let's say I'm starting here to establish my lettering space, stopping here because that's my letter width. It matches all my other letters, and then just box that straight down. Come down here, vertical, 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 and then just strike a diagonal line. That's your Z. Okay, let's have some fun. We got the middle of our letters at the base of our neck. We got a brush loaded up with some good paint. Got my number 2 Kafka Kwill. I'm going to start out with the A, capital A, and it starts out with a thin stroke, so we'll go ahead and load up, palette, but then we're just going to tap it on the sides like that. Just a few taps like that to get it contracted. Once we've got it contracted, now we're going to choose the outside or left side as our first stroke. So I got my maul stick pretty cocked in order to get that. It's way down. It's like about maybe 6 inches below the guideline in order to get that angle. Because if you just had your maul stick straight, it'd be very hard to make that angle. So you got to adjust that maul stick for the direction of the stroke. And in this case, this is the only place this is going to happen on the capital A. So, so we're going to start out and just do our left side. We're going to tuck it right in the top. Bring it on down, right down the middle. And then spin counterclockwise to make a point on that baseline. I'm going to have to reload. And then we're going to tuck it in this corner right here, overlap just a little bit, and then bring it down and spin clockwise to make that flare. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tap our brush to make a real chiseled point or edge, and then just tuck it into that corner and then spin counterclockwise to end that stroke. The right stroke is going to be a thick stroke, so we're going to go ahead and charge our brush as we normally would for a thick stroke. Semi-chiseled, not full on, but just semi-chiseled. Then we're going to establish our outside stroke. So we're going to touch down. We're going to do the exact same thing we do with our verticals, where we're just making a nice graceful sweep. When we get down here, we're going to spin clockwise to make a nice little point. That nice little point that we make down here helps us finish off the letter nicely. Then obviously we're going to have to flatten our brush again in order to make the other side of that stroke. So we're going to just put it right inside of that, overlap 50%, and there's a nice graceful sweep down, out, and spin counterclockwise. And then again, we just flatten our brush, tuck it in the corner, and spin counterclockwise. And we just do the same thing on the top, tuck it in that corner, and just pull it straight across and spin clockwise. Now we have a contracted brush to make the horizontal bar, so we can go ahead and do that. And again, my brush is, and make sure that our nose is in the center of the letter. This helps us get a really good a bead on direction. And I like to flare it. I like to flare the bars too, just to add the flare effect to all the letters. And I know I did that in a few strokes. I was just kind of trying to monkey with it a little bit, but it should be done in just 2 strokes, obviously. Okay, and then the B just starts out with a vertical stroke, basic vertical stroke. So we're going to start out, you know, with our center line being our spine. Just to the left of that, we're going to come down in and back out to the left and spin counterclockwise, recharge, overlap 50%, in and out, and spin clockwise. Now, we don't have to finish those letters because we're going to cover that with the next strokes. So now for these rounds, we're going to start out at a 45-degree angle, and the reason why is it makes it really easy to come out horizontally at a 45. That gives us our thin stroke. And then by the time we start to rotate around this round, we start pushing down and to flatten our brush to make this thick stroke. And we have our little guide here, so we know where we're going, also our little line. And then we come around just above the halfway point. And as we come around, we're going to stay horizontal all the way around. So I'm going to load up again. 45 degrees out of this corner, coming over. Now I'm spinning the brush slightly, and I'm going to push down hard right here, because that's where we want that stick to be, and then come around and level off. And the whole time we're looking at this inside negative space. That's the space we really want to focus on. We want this round to be the same as that round, and it to look uniformed as we come around. It's much easier to touch up the outside of a stroke than it is the inside. And so that's why we want to focus on this inside negative space. That's the heart of the letter. And then, you know, you may not make it all the way around, and that's fine. We can just touch it up like that. Then to do the lower round, the exact same way. Now we want a nice little gap in here, nice little space, you know, triangular space in here, because that's really what makes that look elegant, with having that space in there. So we're going to come off of that 45 just like we did the upper stroke. We're going to come out of that with a slight overlap, and as we come around, we're going to start pushing down the same way. Push, 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 and then start to let up at the round part. And we're still looking at this inside stroke. We really want that inside negative space to be uniform. And touching that up is our goal. And then once we've done that, we can come right off of this middle with a contracted brush like this, off the baseline, and just pull that right into it. And back up. And we need a little touch up here. And if we need to touch up these outside rounds, we can do that too at that point. And the C in this alphabet, along with the G, doesn't have quite a hook. It doesn't start out with like this super hook that comes around at the ends of these strokes. It's more flat on the top. So that makes it that kind of makes make this a unique alphabet. And so all we're going to do is start out with come off of our points that we made. We're going to come horizontal the whole time. We're going to be horizontal. We're going to start to push down at this point, and then we're going to push fully down at this point, and as we come around we're going to let up at this point, and then we're just going to follow that right on through. So we're going to load up our brush, get it flat, start out at this point, come around, start pushing down, push hard, and then come around down to our, and follow through with this, even though your brush may be dying, just go ahead and follow through all the way to the end. And we're looking at this inside negative space when we're doing this. That's the goal, because that's really determines the elegance and the executing this letter well. See that you were just looking at this part down to this part. That's what we're focusing on. The outside will take care of itself as we push down on the brush. And then to cap off the ends, we simply load up a brush if we need to, obviously, and then get it pretty flat. We need this pretty flat because we're going to be spinning. We're going to be spinning pretty good, and we're going to come right out of this following this stroke, and we're going to spin counterclockwise to our point. We're going to start out following the stroke, and then we're going to spin counterclockwise and stop. And then we're going to flatten our brush, hit it once, and then tuck it in this corner, and then spin clockwise to cap it off. That gives us basically our thick. But we want to make sure that stays thin right there, and this one down here it does as well. So we're going to flatten our brush again. We're going to do the same thing but in reverse on the bottom. So basically we're going to follow our stroke, and then we're going to spin clockwise and stop at our mark. And we're going to now what we do is flatten our brush, tuck it in that corner, and spin clockwise. See, now my brush died when I did the initial stroke, so I have to come back and just finish it off. Oops, I kind of went a little far there. That happens, you just wipe it out of there and just do the exact same cap off. Tuck it in the corner and spin clockwise. Then the D starts with an obvious vertical stroke. And that again is just, and you can see the angle of my maul stick for those who are using a maul stick. It's almost at a 5 to 7 degrees. And that gives me that pivot power. But you really have to kind of mess with it so you know that, so it's not forcing your brush to go off at an angle. There's a little learning curve for everything, right? Come down, sweep to the left, and spin counterclockwise. Again, overlap, 50%. In, back out, spin clockwise. Again, we don't have to cap those off because they're not, because we're going to do that with this, with the connecting strokes. So we're going to go ahead and load up, and this is like the opposite of the C almost. We're going to be thinking about this inside negative. We want to, as we come around, we're going to start out horizontal, flat, and we're going to come around, we'll start pushing down, and when we get to this point, flatten all the way, then come down. We're going to be looking at these two, at the space here and the space here. So starting with a 45-degree brush, you're going to come out, start pushing down, really push down, looking at that negative space on the top. We're going to come around and finish off our stroke. So that's our goal, is to look at that while we're looking at this. We're just trying to match those two things. That's our goal. Not thinking about the outside at all. And then we got to finish that stroke off. Depending on your paint flow, things like that, it's just very flexible, because you don't know if you're going to be able to make it all the way, like I didn't. So I'm just going to have to come in with a 45, pull my brush up, right into that. I'm just thinking about this. That's all I care about right now, because we can come back and touch this up. Make that look nice. Okay, and then the E. And if you need to make this stroke wider because you want it to match, you know, have a consistency throughout the strokes, it's really easy to do, because you can just, you know, since you've really nailed your inside negative space, got that where you want it to be, you know, you can just touch this up by just simply gliding it right around, just like you were just going to make an outline around that. You can really touch it up easily because you have something to follow. So the E starts with a vertical. Touch down, go into my center line, sweep it back out left and spin counterclockwise. Recharge, flatten. Don't even try to do the second stroke without flattening your brush. It's just frustrating you. Touch down 50%, pull in, pull in to the middle, and sweep back out, spin clockwise. My maul stick slipped, so that's what happened there. And then with the E, with the horizontal strokes, we're going to go ahead and recharge, means putting paint in, and then recharge, and then go ahead and we flatten it, but then we hit it, the edges, until we contract our brush to 50%. Once we got it there, we just make a horizontal line following this horizontal line, and I got my maul stick now at about 30 degrees, and we're just going to follow this straight across to our end point where we marked. Follow it straight across, following the guideline, stop, and go right back in the exact same spot, but now taper down 50% and stop. Do the same thing with the middle, but in the middle we're going to stick, don't forget to stick your nose right in the middle of the letter. Go at just above the halfway point, and this time we're going to go up just slightly, just a little bit of a rake upward. You can see the distance between here and here is different. This is narrow here, and then we're going to go right back in the exact same spot, but this time we're going to taper down. So we come down 50% like that. And then the baseline, exact same thing, reversing the top line. Take it right in that corner, pull it straight across our baseline, stop at the stopping point, right back in the exact same spot, and then overlap 50% and stop. Now all we have to do is just get our brush flat. We just got to get our brush flat. In order to cap off the ends, and clean them up. So now we just tuck it in and spin clockwise, tuck it in, spin clockwise, tuck it in, spin clockwise. Now the F, is done very much like the E. And we just do our basic vertical, come down, sweep to the left and spin counterclockwise, recharge, chisel our brush, overlap 50%, pull into our middle, and then back out right again. Spin clockwise. My brush is pretty chiseled, so I'm just going to tuck it in and spin counterclockwise. Now, just like the E, I'm going to recharge the brush and then just tap it to 50% of the width, and just stick it right in that corner. Pull straight across the top guideline, stop, back in the corner, straight down, overlapping 50%. Same exactly with the E, horizontally. I'm just going to tuck it in and go up slight go up with a slight rake, up, and then tuck it right back in the same spot, and then come right back down. 50%. Flatten the brush, tuck it in, spin, tuck it in, spin clockwise. And that caps those off nicely. Alright, the G will be done the same way as the C, with the exception that we're going to kind of swing it up at the bottom in order to connect that vertical bar. And we're going to load up the brush, nice and chiseled. Same concept where we want to stay flat, start pushing down, and really push down, hit the middle part, and then come back around, and we're going to sweep up just a little bit. So start out with at the top line, touch down, horizontal, staying horizontal, start pushing down, really push down hard, and then start to swing down, looking at that negative space, hitting the bottom line, and then coming back up. So we just want to look at this negative space and this negative space, that it's uniformed. So this round is like this round, and vice versa. And then we're going to go ahead, we have to charge up our brush again. And this is kind of thin, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to thicken up the outside and bring it around. And now we're going to do our vertical. And that's going to be our middle spine, so we're going to come right off that. We're going to go from the left to the left, and then right. I'm going to swing out a little bit and swing that back over. Now that thin is going to be too thin there. We want it to be the appropriate thin stroke, so we might have to build that up slightly. Just by coming around and cleaning it up, we'll do it. And then let's go ahead and do the upper end stroke, flared out, and we'll go ahead and chisel our brush, and we'll do the exact same thing we did with the C. Coming out of that line, spinning counterclockwise, stop, flatten the brush, tuck it in the corner, and spin clockwise. So now we contract our brush again, 50%. We're going to do just like we did with the E and the F with this stroke. Obviously reverse though, so this will be the flare back here. So at the halfway point, touch down, and we're going to go start at the top and then bring it down, and then 50% below that, and then bring it up. So we get that nice flare going. Now the capital H is going to be 2 verticals. So we're going to set down, bring it on down, sweeping nicely to the left, and then spinning counterclockwise, recharge and re-chisel our brush, overlap 50%, pull in, then back out, and spin clockwise, tap the brush to flatten it, so we can get a real clean, sharp tuck in the corner and spin counterclockwise. Same with the top, but we spin clockwise. So we spin clockwise at the top. And then we just do the same thing with the right stroke. Coming in from the left, down in the middle, back out to the left again, spin counterclockwise, reload, recharge, and re-chisel. Overlap 50%, pull in to the middle, then back out, spin clockwise, tap the brush to flatten it. Spin clockwise down here, tuck in the corner, and spin counterclockwise. That spins it right into that little point down there. I need more paint, so I'm going to reload in order to make that horizontal bar. Then slightly contract it. Face in the middle of the letter. Pull it straight across. Just above the halfway point. I'm going to give it that little flare. Don't have to, but depending on how fast you need to do the letter. If you don't need to do that, it's fine. I just like to give it just a little flare. It's called the flare alphabet. Then the capital I is just a obvious vertical stroke, so we just tuck it in off to the left, bring it down right in the middle, swing it out to the left, spin, counterclockwise, re-chisel, reload, re-chisel, 50% into the middle, back out, nice graceful sweep, spin clockwise, tap. So normally you don't have to retouch the top with this brush because it's got fine hairs. Tuck it in the corner, spin counterclockwise. Now the J's got that little hook at the base, but we've got our mark established there. We don't want to go beyond that because that's the letter width we decided to establish in our sketch. So we just start same like a vertical stroke left. We're going to come swinging down, staying horizontal. We're just going to whip it right into that point. So we're going to go in to the left and then down all the way past our guideline, then just bring it around and whip it up into that point. Stop there. That gives us a little marking place to shove our brush when we're getting ready to finish off the stroke. Overlap 50%. Pull that straight down in because we want that flare. And then this we're just going to drop straight down and swing it around, but we're going to go lower. So now we have this little like snake tongue right there. And now we're just going to reload our brush, re-chisel. Same width as we always want it to be, that nice semi-chiseled. Stick it right in between those two snake tongues, drop down, and then spin up. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I just meant to spin. We're spinning clockwise. So we're touching down with a full chiseled brush, and then we're pulling it horizontal, but we're sweeping up and spinning clockwise. The K. The K is, we get our vertical stroke, a lot of vertical stroke practice, and then come down, sweep to the left, spin counterclockwise, overlap 50%, bring it in, back out, spin clockwise, touch down, tuck it in the corner, spin counterclockwise, touch this up if you need to. And then now we're going to go ahead and we're going to chisel our brush, load and chisel. And we don't have to make it super chiseled, just a real relaxed chisel like that, because it is going to be a thin stroke, and we're going to be horizontal the entire time we make it. And it will be flared on top too. So we're going to start with the outside, because we always want to establish our outside of the letter. So we're just going to touch down, and we're just going to bring it straight down at a horizontal, right down our spine right there. So touch down and just pull straight down. The brush is horizontal right now. I'm not twisting it. And then we're going to push it into that. You might have to get your brush flattened a little bit. We're going to push it right into that and just flare it. It was just a taper. It's just a taper. So basically we're starting out 50% up here and tapering in right into this stroke. And then we can actually flatten the brush up. And to make these uppers, because of this brush, we can just touch down and pull that in. Because of the way the fine hairs on this brush, it makes a real nice tight in stroke, real clean edge. So then we have to reload, And this is where we want to be careful and not to go too far out here. So just start heading for our mark. So again, we've already established a line, so that's the center. So we're just going to come down, swing it down, and then we're going to sweep out and spin clockwise to make our little point down here. Again, that point's vital because when we go to touch up, it just makes it so much easier. And then we're just going to tuck that in because that's not really a 50% overlap. It's just a little tiny overlap, but not much. And then this will be the 50% overlap. And we spin counterclockwise. Now be careful this one too, because there's a temptation to make this way too thick, like come down and try to really sweep it, and we make it like double thickness. So it's really important just to think 50% overlap. I'm not going to go more than 50% overlap because you want the letter to look consistent. I'm going to see if I can just get rid of that guy. Okay, now we're just going to flatten out our brush, do the exact same thing we've been doing, which is just tuck it in the corner and spin counterclockwise. There's no paint on this. I didn't recharge it to do these ends. You have enough paint in the letter, so all we have to do is just chisel it. We're just trying to make a razor blade chisel in order to get a real clean ending on that stroke. And then the L. The L is obviously starts with a vertical. That's why practicing verticals are helpful, but it all is helpful. Rounds too. Overlap, come down, and then sweep out left and spin counterclockwise. Charge, overlap 50%, and sweep out right and spin clockwise. My brush is pretty chiseled, so I can get away with probably just capping it off here. Just clean that up a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit, but you don't have to there because we're going to go ahead and do the same thing like we do with the E, where we touch down, load up, and then tap the edges, get it to 50%, tuck it in, there's a little more, and then follow our baseline, stop at our stopping point. I didn't stop the stopping point. Stop at our stopping point. Back in the same exact location, sweeping up, 50% overlap. Mechanical, mechanical, mechanical. Everything's got to be mechanical. Then we just flatten our brush, tuck it in, spin clockwise. And if you're at this point, after about 15-20 minutes, our brush is getting pretty gummed up right in the end of the brush here. So after about 15-20 minutes at the most, we need to stop and clean out our brushes. Just run it through quickly through some lacquer thinner and get all this gunk out of here. Because what's going to happen is it's going to become more and more difficult to letter. This is going to get really stiff in the back, and we're not going to recognize that or realize that. So about 15 minutes, just keep swirling it just swirl it out real quick. You don't have to get all the paint out, but just get the gunky stuff out of there and regroup. It's worth it, and it'll make lettering much more pleasurable. Okay, the M is going to be a thin, thick, thin, thick, and the reason why why it's done that way is because everything evens itself out in this Roman letter. It's really a neat little trick. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out with our first stroke on the left, and again that's going to be a thin stroke. So we're going to load, charge, and then we're going to go ahead and tap, create a 50% stroke or letter width, like so. And then all we do is make a vertical stroke. So we're just going to make our vertical stroke. Touch down, pull down, exactly like what we've been doing. Just sweep it and then spin counterclockwise. And then overlap just a little bit. Pull that down, back in, and then back out again and spin clockwise. We can tap our brush, cap that off, spinning counterclockwise. And again, like I said, I like to do the outside parameter that establishes everything. So this last stroke will be a thick stroke, so go ahead and recharge, chisel, and we're going to start out. We can start with the left. We've got our spine here. We know that's the. We're not going to go beyond that, so we can just go ahead and touch down, make a basic vertical, come down, sweep, spin counterclockwise, and then recharge, reload, rechisel, overlap 50, pull it down, back out to the right, spin clockwise, tap, cap it off, spin counterclockwise. Now, we've got our middle point. You can see that's centered in there, so that's a good thing. This is going to be a thick stroke. That's going to be a thin stroke. So what we can do is we know that that's our middle spine because we've already established that. You can see this one's a little lower and this one's a little higher. That's going to be our thin stroke. Our goal is to get this inside negative peak right here and right here to match as humanly possible. That just is saying that the letter's all balanced. And so we're going to start out with our thick. We're going to do our left side. And it's just like doing a vertical stroke. We're going to act like we're just coming right out of that top corner, and we're going to touch down and sweep it down to the left and spin counterclockwise. And we just do the exact same thing, just like we're doing a vertical stroke. Exactly. It's always going to be the repetitive. We're going to do 50%, and then we're going to swing in, back out, but we're going to stop at our blue line. Just stop it. We're going to stop at that line right there. I don't want to go any further than that, because that's where our thin stroke, other diagonal thin stroke, is going to be connecting and passing through. So we're going to just go ahead and do a 50% brush width, and we're going to come right out, like we're going to come right out of this corner, off the inside corner. What we're trying to do again is trying to line these up horizontally. We're going to do the best we can. So we're going to come right out of this corner. So we're going to do the bottom or the right side on this one. Come down, do a flare, spin clockwise, stop, come back. If we have to tap our brush a little just to make a little flare, come out of this corner, back in. Remember, this is a thin stroke, so it's just thin, like that. Now you see this point and this point match. And here's the other thing. Here's the other thing we're trying to match. We're trying to match these. In other words, this width here to match this width here. And if everything lines up right, if everything comes out right, those things will match. So this matches this, matches this, and this obviously is close to it. But really the goal is to get these two to match, this to be a uniform negative space to this, and it's a well-balanced letter. The N is much more easy, or easier. In other words, we have two thin strokes on the outside. So we're going to go ahead and recharge, tap the edges of our brush to get that 50%. And all we got to do is make two thin strokes, just like you did with the M. Get our face right in the middle of the letter. Touch down, bring it down, swing to the left and spin counterclockwise, tap the brush and load if we need to. Overlap. Bring it down, swing it out right, spin clockwise, tap, cap it off, spinning counterclockwise. Got another thin stroke to do. We're going to do left, come down into our middle, all the way down to the baseline, swinging left again. Tap the brush if we need to get a little flare. I'm actually low on paint, so I'm going to have to reload a little bit. Overlap 50%. Back into the middle and back out. Spin clockwise. Now this diagonal on the end is a thick stroke. So we're just doing the exact same thing we did with the M. Only this time our targets are similar, but only this time what we're going to do is we're going to kind of head out to the outside a little bit. I'm going to make this a little bit wider because this is going to end up wider. So we're going to start out in the middle like we did, you know, coming right off of this point, sweeping down and then spinning. Our target is just a little wide. So that width there. Looks like these widths, and so we spun it counterclockwise, and we're just going to do the reverse on the right side, tucking in 50%, and then coming into the middle, and then back out to a flare. We can tap our brushes. Oh, I need paint, and then just cap off the bottom, and the top looks pretty good. Spin clockwise on the tops. Alright, the tricky O. Tricky O is basically somewhat of a circle. You know, that's going to also depend on your letter width. If it's condensed, it's going to be more of an oval. If it's extended, it's going to be an oval in the other direction. But for this case, we're just going to stay with pretty much a circle. And the goal for the O is when we come around, we're going to come around like we did with the C and the G. We're going to come off the top line. And as we come to this point, we're going to, and it's always horizontal, always a horizontal brush. When we get to this point, we're going to start pushing down here, and then we're going to really push down here. And then we're going to start lifting up here, and we're just going to let it go, because our brush actually is going to create the thin stroke down here because it's going to be horizontal the entire time. So with a loaded chiseled brush, and this is where we're also thinking about this inside space as well. Exact same thing. So we start at the top line, come around, start pushing down, really push down, start letting up, and then just lightly let up a little bit and go just below the baseline, just slightly. So we're just thinking about this right here. That's all we're thinking about. I don't even care about this outside, just that inside, because that's what's going to make the letter, hands down. And then we just do the reverse. We do the reverse, and what's nice is we have that other mark over there that's helped us establish, and you can see that it's become the outside, and that was intentional. We want to be able to come off of this stroke. We're horizontal, start pushing down, really push down, and then start letting back up. Now, I went over that mark a little bit, and the reason why is I was looking at this inside negative space, seeing that I need to counterbalance what was happening, because I could see that it was becoming too close to cutting off inside. So I adjusted for that and made sure I went to the outside a little bit more in order to just get my mind around making this oval uniform. And you can actually see that it is slightly kicked in right here. You can see that the shape of it is slightly kicked in. All kinds of tricks for counterbalancing that. You can come in and do it with this. As long as your thin stroke down here remains the same. See, that already helped fix that. And then you can come back and thicken these up as well. And this one looks pretty good, but I'm just going to kind of hit it. Just as you go around like this, you can just kind of make it uniform, a little more uniform. In the P, again, our vertical stroke. Face in the middle of the letter. Touch down. Go in. Back out to the left. Spin. Counterclockwise. Overlap 50%. Back in. Back to the right. Clockwise. Tap the brush, make it flat. Tuck it in. That's a nice little decorative point at the bottom there. And then tuck it in the corner, spin counterclockwise. Now we're going to do the same thing with the, like we did with the B and the R. Oh, I'm sorry, we haven't gotten to the R yet. The B, and we're just going to come around, but again, this goes down to the halfway point. It's going to be at 45. Horizontal for a while. Start rotating. Push down. Bring it around to our line. Our line's our spine. Because if we follow that, this will be nice, a nice negative shape. If we follow our line, there'll be nice negative shape in there. Ran out of paint, so recharge. Tap it so it's thin. Still a 45. Tuck it in there. Pull it around. Still thinking of that inside stroke. I don't care about the outside. I just care about the inside stroke. The inside negative space. Can always touch this up and even it out on the outside like that. Then the Q, exact same thing as the R. Did I say R? I keep saying R. Alright, the Q is the exact same thing as the O, executed the exact same way. So we're just concentrating on pulling from this point around, start pushing down, push hard, start letting up, just thinking about that negative space. That negative space is all we're thinking about. I will do anything to adjust that. See, because I saw that that was where I needed to be. I needed to be lower in here and I need more space in there. So that's the goal. The focal point is that inside negative space. Going to come off here with a chiseled, loaded brush. Same thing. Start pushing down. Push down hard here. Bring it around. Like that. If you get messed up like that, just get a pushing tool. It's got paint all over it. Pushing tool. And touch that up. That inside negative space is what we want to have consistent. Because that makes it a real nice, clean, well-shaped letter. And then, of course, you can always touch up the outside. Much easier to do. Much easier. Always easier to touch up the outside. And for the tail, it's going to be basically a 45. And it's going to be basically a thin stroke, overlapped 50%. It's going to start out thin on the top. We're going to take our loaded brush, semi-loaded brush, not too much paint. And then we're going to tap, get a nice 50% out of that. Don't worry about the top of it being horizontal. We're going to take care of that later if you want to. And so now we're just going to touch down. We're going to follow our line, spin clockwise, overlaps just a little bit up there, and then flare it out and spin counterclockwise. That gives us our nice little shape in the bottom there. And then I'm just going to go ahead and chisel the brush, no paint, and to make this nice and clean, we can just touch down. Touch down, get your brush really vertical, really horizontal, vertical, and then this one's the basic where you tuck it in the corner and spin counterclockwise to get that point. Spin counterclockwise. Then the R, R starts out with a vertical stroke in the left, come down, in, back out, spin counterclockwise, overlap 50% after reloading, back out clockwise, tap the brush, make it flat, tuck in, spin counterclockwise, reload, 45 degree, horizontal, start pushing down, push down really hard, and then bring it around right along your pencil line. This shape to be this shape. Like as if it was cut in half here. Like if it was cut in half here, this would be the mirrored image of this one. And then we just want to touch this up. Follow this through with a contracted brush. 45 degrees. Pull it in and up. The leg of the R is the same like the K. It's like the K. We don't want it to go too far. If we go too far, it looks funky. So this, we want to do the outside stroke first. I guess in this case it would be the top. So we're going to pull right up from this corner down, and then we're going to spin clockwise to a point right there where we made our mark. So we're pulling down, spin clockwise, and then we don't want to overlap 50% on the top. We want that to be a thin part of the thick stroke. Otherwise it looks too thick up there. So we're going to, but when you come down, we're going to flare out. And again, like the K, we don't want to flare this out too much. We just want to be the same width as the rest of the flares in the alphabet. So coming off of this, come down, spin counterclockwise, tap the brush, tuck it in, spin counterclockwise. All right, troublemaker. Here we are. Good old S. All right, so we're going to start out like we did with the C and the G, where it's not going to be a super hook here. These aren't super hook letters at the ends of these rounds, just flat. So we're going to start out with a horizontal brush. We're going to do the same thing like we've done with the rounds, but obviously just a tighter radius. So our focus is, these are our outside points. All four of these points are outside points. And this is our middle spine, the pencil drawing we've done. So the only time we are recognizing that as a middle spine is when we get to the middle of the S. Otherwise we're just going to concentrate on hitting these 4 points. So 4 points establishing the shape and form of our letter. So start out with a well chiseled brush, starting out horizontal at the top guideline, coming out, around, meeting our point. Start pushing down here. Now push, 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 push hard, and then swing it around and meet that point, and follow through all the way down to the bottom baseline. Okay, we've got our first spine of the S. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to make our ends. So do the same thing like we've been doing with the C and G. Just right out of this, and then spin counterclockwise. Tap the brush to flatten it, tuck it in the corner, and spin clockwise. And then we can go ahead and do our base end stroke. Tuck it, put it vertical brush, and we're gonna spin clockwise right up into the stroke. We're spinning and sweeping up. So that's what that stroke is. We're touching down, spinning and sweeping. Oops, I swept up too much. And sweeping up like that. So we're spinning and sweeping up. We'll have to touch this up as we come around because it's just paint left it. Okay, now we can see that this little business needs to be touched up. We can see that we have plenty of room because we still have to make this a wider stroke. Our goal was to just follow that spine and then make adjustments wherever we need to. And that would have been our first stroke, obviously, and then capping it off the ends was our second, third, and then making this stroke the thickness we want it to be to match all the rest of them is just simply following the exact same process we did to finish that off. So we just go inside of the stroke and just feather it in from that point, make it the width we want, and bring it around, and just taper it right into the thin stroke. And that established that's the because a sketch is really what we were following, what establishes the shape of the S. Now the T, as I mentioned, I like to go ahead and just do the horizontal top bar, and that's just simply a chiseled and then tap down to 50% loaded brush. And all we're going to do is we're going to start out first following the horizontal from mark to mark right across the line and stop. Then we're going to go 50% overlap up to the center and then back down 50% overlap on the other end. Tap our brush, tuck it in the corner, and spin clockwise. Now all we have to do is come straight off the middle of that stroke, because that establishes our letter width and everything, and our letter spacing and all of the things that we really need. And now all we have to do is make a vertical stroke, and we don't do a 50% overlap up here. We keep it thin, thick. Come down, spin counterclockwise, load and chisel. Keep it inside, and then taper out and spin clockwise. Tap the brush, tuck it in the corner, and spin counterclockwise to the other corner. Capital U is a thick, then a thin. So the thick is on the left, thin is on the right, and that will be the same thing for the rest of them, the V and the W and the Y. And it's so we're going to do, basically it's just doing a thick stroke, standard vertical stroke, but then we're going to sweep it, obviously, and then we're going to staying horizontal the whole time. So we're going to do the outside or left side, tuck it in, bring it down, still a taper, and then swing it around, make a nice hook shape, looking at that inside. And then we're going to do an overlap, 50%, bring it in, and we're just going to follow that tapered stroke. We're not going to make it thicker there. Don't want to make it thicker. And then this is a thin stroke, so we're going to do what we've been doing with thin strokes, where we charge our brush, load it, and then we're going to tap, make a 50% width of the brush. Starting with the left side, bring it down our line, and then swing it around and overlap, making sure it's a thin stroke. And again, overlap. We can bring it right around. We might have to bring a little touch up here. And then the V, the V is just like what we've been doing with the M, any angle stroke. This starts out with a thick stroke. So we're going to do the left side outside, and looks like I'm encroaching on the U. You'll get the idea though. So that's, again, this is our center line. So we're going to start out, and then don't worry about trying to make it a horizontal here. We can do that, take care of that later. Don't try to cap it off with your brush. Just make a nice, good stroke, a nice, good angled stroke, and we're going to come sweep it, and then back down, and spin counterclockwise. So there's just a kind of little arc, just a nice little graceful arc. So that way you don't have to worry about the top. Don't even think about the top. I mean capping it off, that is what I mean. 50% overlap, bring it down into the middle, and then swing it out and stop at our sketch line. Don't go past it. And then to taper that off, just all we have to do is just tap our brush, tuck it in the corner, and pull it to the right and left, and it cleans it right up. And then the thin stroke, right stroke, is exactly what we've been doing. We're just taping it, loading our brush, and then we are contracting it 50%. We can do our outside. We don't have to do our outside. We can do our inside because we've already established the shape of our letter. That's represented by our sketch line. And we just do the same thing. Don't worry about capping off the top. We just bring it in. We're sweeping it to the left. Have to reload. Touch down, 50% overlap, bring it down, and sweep it to the right, and spin clockwise. And then we just tap our brush, make it flat, tuck it in the corner, spin counterclockwise, flatten again, just in case we need to clean this up. And basically I'm holding the brush at a 45-degree angle in order to get that real clean edge to clean it up. Then the W is, again, like I said, two narrow V's. That's all it is. So we're just going to do our two V's, just exactly like we just did. Sorry, I've encroached on the other letters, but hopefully you get the idea. And then it's just doing the exact same thing. It's just two little V. Remember, we're stopping here. Don't go past that. And this will be a thin. We start with the left side. That way we're always consistent and mechanical. And this also we have to drop down low. So we don't want to go all the way to the top. When we come out, back right, stop. And I'm going to go ahead and do the diagonals before capping everything off. So again, now we just, like we're coming right out of this corner, like we're coming right out of that corner, and this is going to be a thick stroke. Just like we do with the M, and we're coming down, and then we're going to spin counterclockwise, and now we can come all the way up to the top, 50% overlap, and then we're going to swing it out and stop. We're going to stop at the sketch line. So we're going to go past that. And then now this final stroke is going to be a thin stroke. So we're just going to do the exact same thing as we've been doing. Loading. And then we're going to contract 50%. And again, we want this space here to be equal to this space. So you can see I need to make just a hair of an adjustment. And then come down, swing it, and so these points should have been equal. That was our goal, just like the M. To get that equal, I could have come down a less of an angle, and that would have made them equal. Then we're going to come down, spin, and that also would have made this baseline stroke the same width. Then we can just cap off these tops with a super chiseled brush. All you have to do is just touch down, touch down, touch down, touch. And these we just do like we've been doing. Into the corner and spin counterclockwise. Into the corner and spin counterclockwise. The X is going to be a thick stroke, thin stroke. So this is going to be our thick stroke, and this is going to be our thin. So basically, we're going to do the same thing what we've been doing with the V and the W. That is, load our brush, chisel it. Don't worry about capping off the top again. We're just going to follow our line that we made. That's going to be our spine that we made, and then we're just going to touch down. We're doing our left side. I'm going to swing down, spin counterclockwise, and then we're going to overlap 50% with a loaded chiseled brush. And spin clockwise. And we're going to tap, tuck it in, spin counterclockwise. And again, this guy this end we can just touch down. A little pain in there. Nice flat brush. Touch down and just pull that right down. Then the thin stroke is again contracted 50%. I'm just going to follow our cross line there, coming down and spinning counterclockwise. So we're just going to come in here, touch down, come down, and spin counterclockwise. Re-chisel real quick, 50%. Follow that down, flare it out, spin clockwise. Flatten the brush, clean that up, tuck it in, and counterclockwise. Okay, then the Y is thick stroke one. On Mike's version, these two strokes are pretty much the same. On the actual original alphabet, the right stroke is a thin stroke. We'll just make it somewhere in between. I think this for balance, it was made the same in the sample. Touch down, spin counterclockwise, overlap 50%, back in and back out, stop at that line, and we'll just make this just a slight, then kind of a medium. Down, and then we can cap those off. And now we've got our center point. Even though our sketch line may have changed, our outside perimeter lines have not. So now we know we can establish our center point as being right in the middle of that intersection, the V, and the spin it counterclockwise, come out of that's a thick stroke, and then spin clockwise. So we just want to be right in the middle of that V negative space. Tuck it in, spin counterclockwise. Now for the Z, we're going to go ahead and load, and then make, this will just be like the horizontal will be just like the E. The F, reversed obviously. So we're just going to follow that horizontal with a 50% brush, tuck it in our middle point, our beginning, and spin. We're going to spin clockwise. Then we're going to go ahead and overlap 50% on this point and taper up. We just point in there and then we taper up. That gives us our flare here. Now we can go ahead and do our diagonal. We'll do the inside, knowing that that's our middle. We're just going to come off of that into the middle and then back out This is our ending point, so we want to make sure that we want to stay in that point. We don't want to go way over here somewhere. So we're going to go off our line. We're going to use the line as our A to B. So we have this side, the right side of the brush will be on the line, and then when we get down here, the left side of the brush will be on the line in order for us to end up where we want to be. But it is still a flare. So we come, so we come down, flare it and spin counterclockwise, just like we've been doing, and then load and flatten, tuck it up here in the corner, bring it in, and then we want to flare out 50% when we get down here and stop. Now we're just going to do the exact reverse we did at the top, whereas we're going to use a contracted brush, 50%, starting at the baseline, this corner, not all the way at the corner obviously, pulling it straight across on our horizontal, back right in the exact same spot, and then taper up 50%. Tap our brush flat so it's chiseled, tuck it in the top corner, and spin clockwise. With that same chiseled brush, we're just going to pull our paint down into the corner and go down and right, down and right. Finishes that corner off sweetly.